position within Aerostructures is I'm the director of the Embraer E2 product development programs.
Okay. So, what do you have to do to get that kind of position, or how do you set yourself up for that?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of different ways to do it. Folks get into program management from a number of backgrounds. For me, I'm an engineer by degree. So I came up through the ranks as a design engineer, actually moved into a lot of different engineering roles, and moved into some information technology and engineering technology leadership roles as well. So over the course of about my 15 to 20 year career, I've developed up through those various roles, and then ultimately about 5 years ago moved into my first program management job. And that was for a Boeing nacelle program. I did that for a few years and then was offered the opportunity to run the Embraer programs that I'm currently in charge of.
So were you constantly tinkering then with your dad?
I was, yeah. My dad actually restored antique cars as a hobby. He was a diesel mechanic as his regular job, but he had quite a business on the side restoring antique cars. And so I grew up working in the garage with my dad and taking cars apart and learning how they worked and putting them back together.
You didn't mind getting dirty as a little girl?
No, not at all. I love to dress up. I always looked forward to church because that was an opportunity that I could put on a dress and be a girl. But my mom never really pushed me in that direction, and she didn't try to dress me up. She didn't try to make me a little girl and dress me in pink and do all those things. She kind of left me to, if I wanted to dress up. Of course, she always made sure I had a nice dress and totally supported that. But if I wanted to go out and get up to my earlobes in grease and oil with my dad, she was totally supportive of that too.
That's great.
Of course, my dad loved it. My fun weekends have been completely consumed with one of my primary hobbies, which is racing off-road motorcycles. Very competitive. People tell me that I'm much more competitive than I will admit to. I ride a vintage bike, which is a 1972 motorcycle, so it's quite old. And I compete against other folks riding similar vintage bikes, and a lot of times all the other competitors are men. But I also race in a women's class to try and promote that and try and get other women involved in racing as well, and let them know that there's a safe way to get into racing, and they can race with the other girls. It's generally not quite as competitive as the open classes where you're racing against men who are anywhere from novices as well, all the way up to some of our retired pro racers that we race with. So I started racing with CALVMX probably about 5 or 6 years ago, my first race, and just absolutely fell in love with it. The competition and the organization and the people are a lot of fun and really supportive. And when I've had a bad week at work, because there's a lot of pressure in the job that I have, it's a terrific way to get stress out and have a release to go out and compete.
Now, you've won a unique type of award with CALVMX. Can you tell us what that is?
Yeah, it's called the Ironman. And so we have a number of different classes that are, some are rider age, some are bike age, and then different skill levels. And the Ironman is one of the few awards where we have only one trophy. It's at the end of the year, and so it's a season-long accumulation of points throughout the year to lead up to that one award at year end.
Now, how different is that from the regular racing then?
So the regular racing is typically 5 laps, and that lasts about 15 minutes to run 5 laps depending on how long the track is. But the Ironman is a 30-minute race plus 1 lap, and so it's a little bit more about endurance, and it's definitely about consistency throughout the season, being there for every race, making sure that your bike is working and performing well for every single race. It's difficult to win the Ironman if you miss very many of the rounds, and so I like the additional challenge of it just because it's a little more physical challenge and the endurance. I ride the same bikes that a lot of the guys ride, but I don't have the size or the strength that a lot of the men have who race, and so I have to work a little bit harder to be able to throw the bike around on the track and manhandle it because I don't have that strength advantage. But I find that I have an endurance advantage, and so I try and use that, especially in the Ironman, to my benefit.
Okay. And you also raced with your husband.
Yep.
In a partner type of contraption. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. So this is something that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. A lot of people are pretty familiar with the traditional motocross, but unless you're from someplace in Europe, you probably haven't seen people race an off-road sidecar. Most people, when I tell them that I race a sidecar, they think of the kind of sidecars that you see running around on the road, and that's not at all what we do. So an off-road sidecar is basically a standard, almost a standard dirt bike. It has a little bit different suspension setup, but it has a platform attached to the side of it with a bar. And I basically stand on that platform and use that bar to move myself around, and I am the ballast. And so if I don't do my job right, we crash, is basically what happens. So in our situation, there are different configurations of bikes. Sometimes the platform's on the left-hand side of the bike if the bike came from the UK. Sometimes it's on the right-hand side of the bike if it came from elsewhere in Europe or if it was made here in the US. And so in our situation, it's a UK-based race machine, and so the sidecar is on the left. And that means that when my husband goes into a left-hand turn, I have to throw my weight all the way out the left-hand side of the platform to keep the bike from tipping over. And then the opposite, in a right-hand turn, I have to jump up on the seat behind him on the bike to keep the bike from flipping over the other direction. And so it's very much a partnership because my husband and I have to strategize about the track and about where my weight needs to be in different turns depending on what line we're going to take, whether we're going to take an outside line or an inside line through a turn. And then there's a lot of adjustment that I have to make on the fly. So depending on how the terrain is and how soft or loose or hard-packed a turn might be or how the ruts are forming, the bike will behave differently. And that's one of the things about motocross is the track changes every single lap as riders are going around. And so I have to constantly be adjusting. And we also jump. It's probably one of the most often asked questions is, do we jump that sidecar the way that we do a solo bike? And we absolutely do. My husband's a very aggressive driver, and people say I'm a balance of insane and brave, I guess, because I just go along for the ride. And so when we jump as well, sometimes the bike will pitch or tip in the air, and so I use my weight and move myself around on the bike to make sure that we stay level in flight as we're jumping and that we land safely.
So for clarification, you don't have a seat on that side, on that side part of the bike, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely not just along for the ride. I have a very specific job to do. I'm standing the whole time. And like I mentioned, I throw my weight from side to side, and it's not just kind of stepping one way or the other. I move from my extreme far left position to my extreme far right position. I probably traverse about 6 or 8 feet of distance, and I'm literally hanging off the side of the bike either way, whether we're turning right or we're turning left. Because of the speeds that we carry, and typically the turns are quite sharp, I have to push, and because I don't weigh all that much compared to some of the men who do this, who are much taller and stockier, I have to push my weight out even further to be able to get the same moment arm and get the same effect and controllability on the bike.
Now, when you take a jump, do your feet go airborne as well?
Sometimes. I really have to use my legs as suspension, as my own shock absorption. The last thing you want to do is land a jump stiff-legged and take all that shock up through your knees and into your back. And so when we take off from a jump, I bend my knees pretty significantly, and just depends on the jump. Sometimes we call them kickers. There'll be a lip on the jump that'll really kick the back end of the bike up in the air. And depending on how sharp the takeoff of the jumps are, sometimes that kind of gives me an extra little launch that, yeah, my feet can definitely leave the platform and have done many times.
Okay. Now, coworkers and colleagues know what you do?
They do. A lot of people do. There are actually a lot of motorcycle people here, on-road and off-road. And we've gone on holiday trips and different things with a lot of people from work and a lot of just weekend activities. A number of guys from here that have raced with us at different times with CALVMX as well. And so a lot of people, we really focus on work-life balance. So even within the work day, we try and take some time to talk to each other about what's going on at home and with our families and our hobbies and that sort of thing. So yeah, a lot of people know that my husband and I both race. And a lot of people know that we race the sidecar as well as the solo bikes. And we get lots of questions about what we do for fun.
September 6th, we are having a big event with CALVMX. Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. So we race typically once a month with CALVMX, but there are a few times through the year where we have special events, and this is one of them. There's an organization called ARMA, which is another national racing organization that CALVMX does some partnerships with. And this particular weekend happens to be one of the ARMA national weekends, and it's also the 40th anniversary of Women in Motocross. So when you think about, women getting into engineering or women doing things like racing dirt bikes, you might not think that they've been doing that for very long. So when you hear that it's the 40th anniversary of Women in Motocross, you think, wow, that's a long time. And who really knew that women were actually racing dirt bikes 40 years ago?
You're definitely going to be there.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, I'll be there to race and be there to meet some of these great people, and a lot of the men pros and ex-pros as well that'll be coming. Super supportive of the CALVMX organization specifically, and of current day motocross in general. So it'll be a great opportunity to meet some of those folks that really did it for real, did it for the big bucks back in the day.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been great hearing about your experience here at UTC and how you got involved with engineering and how you, faced whatever challenges there were, and they didn't bother you at all. You got to where you are by just being who you are and just working hard and competing with CALVMX and winning those Ironman Trophy Awards. Great job on your part.
Thank you.
Thank you.